Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to begin learning. Someone said I should make the picture bigger, so I'll make the picture bigger. Hey, we'll make you happy. Here we go. Make everyone happy. It's a big picture. The Torah portion, which is called Parshat Ki Tavo. Ki Tavo. And soon is going to be Rosh Hashanah, right? 2 weeks. So we're preparing by the Jewish people going into the land of Israel. Moses is telling the Jews right before they enter the land of Israel, right? I mean, of course, put this thing in perspective. Everyone knows that Moses did not go into the land of Israel. Now, Moses is giving the Jews his last. Why doesn't this work? Why doesn't it work for me? There we go. His last commandments. Here we go. And it will be. Ki tavo el ha'aretz. The word haya also is usually used when something happy happens. Haya ki tavo el ha'aretz. It says when it says vayehi, it means something tragic is going to happen. It says haya, that something good is going to happen. V'haya ki tavo el ha'aretz, and it will be when you come to the land asher Hashem Elokecha, that God, your God, Naten Lecha, gave to you, Nachala, as a portion, land of Israel. The Rishton, you will conquer it, V'yashav Tabon, you will dwell in it. Okay, let's just do a few of the sentences, and then we'll go back just so that we get the whole picture of what's going on over there. This is, like we said before, it's talking about the first fruits. The first fruits. Rishi is called Pri Adama. You'll take from the first fruits of the land. And Rashi explains it only refers to the 7 fruits that Israel is praised by, which are wheat, barley, grapes, olives, pomegranates, dates, and figs. 7 types. You put them in a tenna. A tenna is a basket. You go to the place that God chose the Shakin Shemosham to make his name rested there. Where is this place? The Holy Temple. But as you probably know, or even if you don't know, I'll tell you now, until the Holy Temple, from the time the Jews entered the land of Israel until the Holy Temple was built, it took 410 years. I'm sorry, 440 years. 440 years from the day that the Jews got into Israel until they built, King Solomon built the temple. What did they do in the meantime? They had these sort of temporary temples. And there were basically 4 of them. One of them was in a place called Shiloh, and it was there for like 369 years. It's a long time. The first temple was there for 110 years. 400, what's happening to me today? 410 years, and the second temple was 420 years. But there was a place called Shiloh that was almost like the first temple. It was like that's why it was there for so long. And then there was another place called, when they came into the land of Israel, there was a place called Gilgal. And then they moved to a place called Nov, and then to a place called Gibon. All right, so we'll see what those places are. We'll look at Rashi later on. Nevertheless, when you come to the place that God chose to put his name there. So let's say for our purposes, we're talking about the Holy Temple or this place, Shiloh. We'll see it's not exactly that way. What are you supposed to do? You take the first fruits over to there, you put them in a basket, you go there. Ubat al Kohen, you go to the Kohen that is in those days, and you say to him, you say to him, Igarti Ayom, I am saying today to God, Kiboti al Oretz, I have come to the land Asher Nishba, Hashem lavotenu loted lanu. I've come to the land that God commanded us. The Kohen that takes this basket from your hand, and he puts it in front of the altar of God. Right? We'll see. He lifts it up, and then you say like this, in front of God, your God, and this from here on, the next like 4 sentences is the main part of the Haggadah of Passover. We repeat this in the Haggadah of Passover also. The Haggadah of Passover, we're praising God with these praises that are also used for bringing first fruits. And what do we say? Arami, it's talking about Lavan. Oved Avi wanted to destroy my father, that's Jacob. But Yerid Mitzrayim, and then Jacob went down to Egypt. The younger Shabbat made the same at, and they went down there with very few people, only 70. And they became there a very great nation. Atzum Varav. There were tens of millions of Jews. There's about 3,600,000 men got out above the age of 20. Only the men. That's not counting the women. And it says that only 1/5 of the Jews got out. Chamushim. There's one other opinion that says 150, or some say 500. Anyway, the Jews were tremendously a great population in Egypt. We're saying you see all this on Passover the nighttime also. Passover Seder. The Egyptians tortured us. And they made us suffer. They gave us hard work. We cried out to God, our God, and God heard our voice, and He saw our suffering and our hard work and our, the pressure that we were under. And God took us out of Egypt with a powerful hand and with a strong, outstretched arm, and with a great fear, great awe. But also all sorts of miracles and signs. Right? We're saying this all in the Holy Temple. You bring your fruits. Now, who brings these fruits, by the way? You can't go to the store and bring them. This is only farmers. Only farmers do this. Farmers that grow their crops, the first crop of the year. Of course, it's only done when there's the Holy Temple, and it's only done in the season time. We'll see, the harvest time. It was like about almost a half a year. God took us out of Egypt. We're thanking God. Thank you, God. You saved us from Lavan. You saved us from all other enemies. We were in Egypt. God, you took us out of Egypt, and you brought us to this place. And you gave us this land, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Now, behold, that's it. That's what we don't say anymore in the night of Passover. And behold, I have brought the first fruits of the land that God gave me, and I'm putting in front of God. And then you should bow down in front of God. Right about his head. You should be happy with all the good that God has given you, and you and your household, and you and also the Levi. You have to give the Levi, because the Levi doesn't have any money of his own. So you have to, and the Ger, Asher B'Kirabecha, and those people who dwell within you. And we're going to see there's a Sforno over here, the Dasakanim. Where do we get the thing of the Ger? So there's several meanings of the word Ger. The word Ger means a convert, and the word Ger can also mean a non-Jew who does not convert, but he accepts on himself the 7 Noahide commandments. And a non-Jew like that, he is allowed to stay in the land of Israel. Anyone who worships idols is not allowed to stay in the land of Israel, but this person is allowed to. Then there's another type of a ger, and he's going to point that out. Sometimes it's referred to a ger, a person whose mother is Jewish. So that person whose mother is Jewish, he is, of course, he's totally Jewish, but not like 100%, because he can't. There's certain restrictions that he does have, especially regarding to being a Kohen, or to connect to the Kohen family. Kohen. All right. Anyway, so that's also another type of ger. We'll see. That's what the Das Zakanim says. That's it. You should be happy. And then afterwards, it talks about bringing what's called Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, and Meiser Oni to the Holy Temple. But let's do this first. The firstborn, the first fruits, first fruits. Ready? Yes. All right, we're beginning from the beginning, and it will be when you come to the land of Israel that God gave to you as a inheritance, and you will conquer it, and you'll live in it. It says Rashi. And you come to this is telling you that you are not obligated to bring first fruits until the land of Israel is conquered and divided. What does that mean, conquered and divided? When the Jews went into the land of Israel, so it took them, they had to fight. They had to fight the people who were in Israel. They had to battle. They had to evict them or to conquer them. In any case, that took 7 years. Then after that, they had to, each tribe was allocated its own part. They didn't live all together like they do now in Israel. Every tribe has its own part, and they got their land, and the land would return to a person after, if he sold it, it would come back after the Jubilee year. And that was it. It was permanent until after the first temple was destroyed. So every tribe had their own area, and every person had his own household and etc., his own plot of land. But it took 14 years until this was all divided up. So only after this 14-year period were the first fruits brought. Here's a BalHaTurim. A lot of this is interesting, but we don't have that much time. So let's see. When you come to the land, what does it say before? Remember the end of last week's Torah portion? It talked about wiping out Amalek, destroying Amalek. And right after it says destroying Amalek, that was the end of last week's Torah portion. It says, when you come to the land of Israel, what is this coming to tell you? Says the BalHaTurim. The Jewish people were commanded to wipe out any mention of Amalek immediately when they came into the land of Israel. Because they Amalek wanted to prevent the Jews from going into the land of Israel. So here we Kitavo. We're just beginning. When it says, and it will be when you come into the land of Israel, you will give first fruits. So right before that, the end of last week's Torah portion, it talks about destroying Amalek. Remember, right at the end of last week's Parshat Kitetse, it talks about destroying Amalek. So where it says over there, destroying Amalek, what is it? And then immediately after it says coming to the land of Israel. This comes to tell you that as soon as you come into the land of Israel, the first thing the thing should be in your mind before you come into the land of Israel is that you have to destroy Amalek. Why? Because Amalek, this is a nation that wanted to prevent the Jews from coming into the land of Israel. He was the one that told the Egyptians that the Jews ran away. And also he was the one that told the Lavan. Remember where he said, Arami Oved Ovi? That's the praises you give. Amalek, he was the one that came to Lavan and said that Lavan, that Yaakov ran away with his daughters and his grandchildren. So therefore, immediately after this thing of coming into the land, right? So first of all, you have destroying Amalek, then you have coming into the land, and then you have the bringing the first fruits. And in the first fruits, you say, thank you, God, that you saved me from Lavan. And thank you for saving me in Egypt, because Lavan was the one who wanted to stop the Jews from coming in. The Amalek, you have to destroy Amalek, because Amalek was the one that tried to stop the Jews from coming into the land of Israel. And he was also the one that told Paro, he was the one that tried to stop the Jews from even leaving Egypt. And he was also the one before that told Lavan that Yaakov was running away. Therefore, this thing of the Bikurim, that we say this praise of God, that we mention Arami Aved Ovi, that's Lavan. Ki Tavo, that's coming to the land of Israel. I'm sorry, and also talk about that we went into Egypt. Those three things which Amalek did. Amalek told Lavan that Yaakov ran away. Amalek was the one who tried to stop the Jews from leaving Egypt. He told Paro that. And Amalek was the one who tried to make a war with the Jews before they went into the land of Israel, not to live. Therefore, it all comes in on order. Last week's Torah portion in the end talks about Amalek. This one talks about coming to the land of Israel, and in the blessing, the declaration we make for the first fruits, we talk about how God saved us from Lavan, and He took us out of Egypt. Ki tavo, ki, the word ki is 20 and 10. This is 30 altogether. Ki tavo, the word tavo means when you come, but this is the same letters as avot, the forefathers. This is what is hinted at in the Talmud in Chuli and Gita Nashe. It says, Be'eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, She'en Be'eretz Israel, there's never in the land of Israel less than 30 ki, gematria 30 tzaddikim that are as important as the avos. Ki tavo, ki means 30, avo are avos, 30 fathers. Very interesting, the BalHaTurim. Here he says, V'haya ki tavo, or it's the OrHaChaim. V'haya is happiness. This comes to tell you that you can never really be happy until all the Jews are in the land of Israel. Like it says, Az Yamalei Schokpino, like it says in Tehillim, only when Mashiach comes and brings all the Jews to Israel, then will everyone be really happy. Then the Jews will really be happy. Here is, so this, Vayaki Tavol Oretz, Lokak, therefore the rabbis say that a ger, a convert, he brings the first fruits, and a convert is a Jew like everybody else, right? Well, sort of, not exactly, because he can live in the land of Israel. He can marry a Jew, a Jewess, no problem. He can own land. He can bring first fruits, and he can bring them to the Holy Temple. But he does not, Eino Korah. He doesn't say this thing over here where it says, Arami Ovid Ovi, Dasher Natata La Avotenu. Where is it? Shenatan Nachala, that God gave us, God gave you as an inheritance. What's an inheritance? God gave to who to inheritance? Direct relatives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now we'll see later on that really converts are, yes, direct descendants of Abraham. Because Abraham was called the father of all mankind. So we'll see this in a minute. Nevertheless, a convert, his parents, his physical parents, were not Jews. He converted. So he can bring the first fruits. If he's a farmer and he has first fruits, he can bring them, but he cannot say La Avotenu, that you gave to our fathers, because his fathers were not Jewish. But in prayer, non-Jew converts do say Avotenu. They say Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avotenu, the God of our fathers. Why? Because we rely on the inheritance that Abraham was called the father of all mankind, Avraham Goyim. So therefore, they are direct descendants of Abraham. As far as the land of Israel goes, not exactly. Therefore, they're not supposed to say with the first fruits. But as far as prayer, yes, they're called our fathers because they're connected to Abraham. Well, lakachta, you should take from the first of the pri adamah, from the fruits of the land, asher tevir me'atzachah, that you bring from your land that God gave to you. Right? You're a farmer, you bring to the first fruits. It says you bring meirishis, from the first fruits, says Rashi, and not all the first fruits. In other words, you don't bring plums and apples and bananas. Not all the fruits have to be our first fruits. Only the seven types. Seven types, right? Grapes, olives, pomegranates, dates, figs, wheat, and barley. Like it says over here, eretz, and it says over there, eretz, chita, usaora, etc. Malan, just like that, it's only talking about the seven types. Land is, right? When it talks about the land of Israel, it talks about only the seven. The eretz, land of Israel is praised by being a land of wheat and barley and olives and figs and grapes, etc. Also, the same thing over here. The praise of Eretz Israel is only with these seven types. What does it say you should bring? Over there, it says you should bring zayt shemen, olive oil. Okay, but olive oil, so you don't bring olives, right? Only the oil? It says, no, it's not right. You bring the olives, and inside of them is oil. And also, the land of Israel is praised for being a land of dvash, of honey. What type of fruits are honey? It says it's talking about the honey that comes from dates. You're supposed to take the first fruits, mereshit, from the first. How does a person do it? A person goes into his field, he sees a fig, and that's first just blossoming, just beginning. Korech alav gami, he ties around like a ribbon for a sign, and he says, "This is the first fruit." He goes to the field. He says, "Oh, this is the first one to blossom, first one to ripen." And he takes it to Cygnus, signs it out, and takes it to the first temple. Right, there's a nice long Ramban over here. Here it says, in the Sifri, it says like this, that you bring it to the place where God chose. Where's this place that God chose? Shiloh. Shiloh. Shiloh, like we said, that was the tabernacle was there for 369 years. And Beit Olamim. Beit Olamim is another way of saying the first and the second temples. The Shama there, it says, you can take. Why? Because the Bamot were Asurim. Bamot means you could make a private altar in your backyard, wherever you wanted to. That was called a Bama. But they were forbidden these two times. When the Jews were in Israel, in the beginning, it was permissible to bring the Bamot. But after Shiloh was built, that was 14 years after they entered the land, conquered it, and divided up, then they built Shiloh. They moved the ark to Shiloh and the altar. Then it was forbidden to make these private altars called Bamas. Gam, you couldn't make it anymore. But also in Nov and Givon, they could bring first fruits. They could bring, but in Bamat Yachid, but in a private Bama, you couldn't. This was called a Bamat Sibur. These others were called a public Bama, a public altar. But in Nov and Givon, they could bring. But they didn't call. They didn't say it's not called because it says mizbeach. You have to make a mizbeach. Okay, so what does it come out that in Shiloh that was made of stones, that was called a permanent place. So in other words, you could only bring the first fruits and read this whole thing that I just told you, this whole declaration of thanks to God that he saved us from Lavan and that he took us out of Egypt, etc., and he brought us to the Holy Land, is you could only say that in the Holy Temple and in Shiloh. But the other places you brought the first fruits, you didn't read this whole declaration. Okay, Okay, Bota el Kohen, you bring it, we're just going over the sentences again, but I want to do it with a little bit of the commentary. You bring it to the Kohen that is in the Kohen that's in those days, and you say to him, I am saying to God that I have come to the land that God promised to our fathers to give to us. He says, Amarti, I'm saying to God that I'm not an ingrate. I have gratitude to God once a year, says to God. Now, one of the explanations says that a big part of this is a person comes to the land of Israel and he works on the land and he had to fight battles before he took over the land. So he's very apt to say that, see if I can find this. 1 minute, let me see if I can find it. He's very apt to say that, I worked hard, I conquered the land belongs to me. And so therefore he has to declare that no, this is the land that God commanded to our forefathers to give to us. It's not because of my merits. The only reason we have this land is because it's God's land. And God just promised that he would give it to us. And he just promised that he would give it to us. He said you have to give it to the Kohen that is in those times. 1 second, let me see if I can find it. It says, even if he's not a very wise person, nevertheless, you should give him great honor, the Kohen. Why? Because when you give these first fruits to him, it's same thing. Yit'aleh shehu, let me say, shemayvi doron lekel. When you bring this first fruits to God, shu abal karka, that God really he owns the land. So therefore, you have to speak to the Kohen because the Kohen, he's the representative of God over here. So you have to give it to him and to speak to him in this very honorable fashion, even if you might be a greater wise man that he is, and etc. All right. The Kohen will take this basket from your hand and he'll put it in front of God, your God. What does it mean? He'll take it. He lifts it up. The Kohen minif yado. He puts his hand underneath your hand. You're the farmer, and both of them lift it up together. It says a tena. This word tena is the numerical value 60. This tells you that if Bikurim is forbidden to eat for a regular person, only the Kohanim eat it. But if it gets mixed up 1 in 60, then the whole mixture is permissible. If it's 1 in 59, then it's all forbidden. And that's because the word tena is 60. That's what he says. You put it in front of God. This is to tell you, you put the basket full of fruits to let you know that the Bikurim, you're not bringing it to the Kohen, you're bringing it to God. And God, he is the one that gives it to the Kohen. And so it is the truth with all the other gifts that the Kohen eats, the pieces of meat and things like that the Kohen eat. These are all gifts not from you. You're bringing it to God, and God gives it to the Kohen. And you answer and you say, an Arami Oved Avi, there was an Arami, which is going to be Lavan. He tried to destroy my father, Jacob, and we went down to Egypt and went down there very few, and we became a great nation. Rashi, the Anita, when it says, and you answer and you say, it means that you should yell out. Arami Oved Avi, we're mentioning the kindness of God, that Lavan wanted to destroy all of the Jewish people. What he wanted to destroy Yaakov. Yaakov married Lavan's 2 daughters, right? And Lavan made him work and etc. for a long time, and he cheated him 100 times. It says, and Lavan cheated Yaakov, and finally Yaakov ran away with all of his. And Lavan wanted to kill him, and God appeared to Lavan in the nighttime and said, "You better not touch him, because he's a navi, he's a whatever, he's my chosen one." But nevertheless, why is so? So what's the? I mean, in the end, Lavan did not destroy the Jewish people, but he wanted to. Because he wanted to, God considers it as though he did. And this is a general principle with the enemies of the Jews, that God reckons their thoughts as though they've already done it. So if there's a nation that decides it wants to destroy the Jews, so God treats it as though they destroyed the Jews. Unfortunately, there have been enough nations that have not only thought that they've also done it. We went down to Egypt. Not only did God save us from Lavan, but there were others also that wanted to destroy us. After this, Yaakov, he went down to Egypt. He went down very, very few, only 70 people, right? Went down to Egypt and became a tremendous, powerful nation in Egypt. Here, let's see where we see this. Find this here. 1 minute, I found a really nice one over here. Excuse me, I'm trying to find this. Here it is. What is this relevant to us now today? Says the OrHaChaim. I mean, this is a commandment only for farmers, and only those who are living in the land of Israel, and only when there is a holy temple. So this is really not relevant for us. And it has to be only fruit farmers. They have fruit trees, right? Or they have wheat, things like that. But if you happen to have apples or go pears or watermelons, this is not relevant to you. So this is very, very, in any case, it's not relevant now. It's only the time of the temple. So it says, because everything that a person does, the good in this world, you'll never be able to really satisfy God. Why? Because you should look what the rabbis say. If God would judge everybody according to Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, as no one would be able to stand in front of God. Because how could we possibly compare ourselves to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their whole lives were just devoted to God, and they didn't ask for anything in return? And God promised them all these things, and he didn't give them anything. The land of Israel, and your children will be like the seed of the sand and the sea. And therefore, it says the Torah that we have to give an excuse, tshuva, Lashem. We have to reply to God, and we have to apologize on the fact that we're not repaying God what we owe him. And that's what it says, Va'anita va'amarta. Anita means to answer, but Anita also means to be humble. Arami says that Arami oved avi, that a Arami is Lavan, but Arami, this is the Yetzer Hora. This is the evil impulse. And he is a Ramai. He tricks us all the time. That's like as the Nachash, like the first serpent. That he tricks people and wants to destroy them. Now, where did this evil impulse come from? God. God made it. So we can say, listen, God, it's true. I'm not repaying you what I owe you. And I realize that I'm really, a big debtor over here. And if you wanted to really, just even make a little bit of a look at the accounting and what I owe you and what I've paid, I'm in bad shape. But on the other hand, I have this thing called the Arami, this Yetzer Hora that you created me, and it's always trying to trick me. And when did it start? That's what it says, Oved Avi. He's trying to destroy my father. Who is my father? Adam Rishon, the first man. Like it says, Avicha Harishon Chet in Isaiah. So Avdu Begorem Misa, as soon as Adam ate from the tree, that brought death and confusion for himself and all the generations that come afterwards. So this is the secret of what's called the foreskin, which is stuck to the person from the time that he's born. So that's what you're saying. You're saying, thank you, God, that you're saving us from love and arami, means thank you, you're saving us also from the Yetzer Hara. But you have to remember, God, you're the one that created this Yetzer Hara. So, okay, I did bad sins, I did bad things, and no way have I repaid you what I owe you. But on the other hand, I mean, you made a lot of obstacles in this thing, God. So, and it started off with Adam. So I'm not really that guilty of the whole business. I mean, you tricked Adam way back then, and it's just so easy to fall into this trap since then. Judaism says that man is basically good. The world is basically good. Everything is basically good. God created the world. The world is good. It says in the creation, when God created the world, he said, God saw everything he made, and it was very good. But people cover this good over. And that began with Adam. So the tendency to make mistakes is very, very great. But basically, everything is good. That's the point. Basically, in essence, everything is good. It's right. And all we have to do is be educated. We have to have education because it all depends on the person himself. It makes no difference. That makes very small difference. What you believe. What you believe is very, very wonderful, very important. The main thing is a person's deeds, what he actually does. What a person does. Okay, so that's what we're saying. Payeru Wasano, that he did us bad. And after we become a nation, and God, you put us we were born in slavery. The Jewish people were born in slavery. And we cried out to God, and God heard our voice, and he saw our desperation and our suffering and the pressure that we were under. You can exchange any of those words you want to. This is desperation. Yes. And God took us out of Egypt with a powerful hand and an outstretched arm, and with a moragadol, with a tremendous, awesome signs and miracles, took us out, and you brought us to this place, and you gave us this land, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. And now, behold, I am bringing the first fruits of the land that you gave me, God, and I'm putting in front of God, and I am bowing down in front of God. Elokecha, he's speaking to the Kohen. He's talking to the Kohen. So what do they do? Rashi says it means you give it to the Kohen. He puts his hand under your hand. They lift these fruits up, and then afterwards you take it back. You take it back from the Kohen, and he holds it in his hand, and the person who owns it goes and lifts it back up again. One more. And you should rejoice with all the good that God gave you and your home, you and the Levi and the Ger, which is among you. And he says the Ger is talking about the convert. He brings, but he doesn't read. You cannot say you gave to our land. Here it says that the only time you can bring these first fruits is in the time of happiness, namely from the holiday of Shavuot, which Shavuot is 3 months after Passover, until Sukkot. Sha'adam malaket, the person takes all of his produce and he brings it to the Holy Temple. But from Sukkot, from the holiday of Sukkot onward, he brings the first fruits to the temple. The whole rest of the year you can bring, but you don't say this whole declaration we had before. You have to give to the Levi. The Levi also, if he has first fruits, he has to also give them. Im nit nat'u b'toch arehem. The Levites were given 48 cities, and they were allowed to plant there. And if they had fruit trees, they had to bring also. They didn't have much agricultural land, but if they did have fruit trees, then they also And the fruits, of course, were of the fruits of Eretz Israel, grapes and figs, etc. Then they would bring to the Holy Temple as well. Okay, so that we learned the beginning of this week's Torah portion. And of course, we know the first fruits are also called the Jews. The Jews are called the first fruits of God. And that we have to bring our efforts also to the Holy Temple, etc. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot, the chapters of our fathers.